So I know that we've been talking a lot about Jura's possible identity, and that's mostly because Jura's possible identity is the hottest topic on the streets right now in the Boruto fandom. And because we've been talking about it so much, I feel as though I've really cemented my opinion on who I believe Jura actually is. I believe that Jura is the awakened, the human form of the juvenile Ten-Tails that was kidnapped or possibly saved by the rest of the Shinju. In that awakened or human form, Jura is using the sliver of ego that was left inside of it by Jigen because of all the chakra interactions that Jigen and that juvenile Ten-Tails had over the course of possibly thousands of years. And thus Jura is using only a sliver of Jigen's ego to try and form a personality, which is why Jura's quest for knowledge is so much greater than all the other Shinju, because all the other Shinju were made from whole people. And that theory, in my mind, has pretty much been all but confirmed. We had Jura calling himself the manifestation of a bijou in chapter 8. Jura, the character, didn't appear until the juvenile Ten-Tails was freed from the chakra rods that were holding it down to the ground. Jura only appeared when the Ten-Tails disappeared, and we haven't seen the Ten-Tails since its disappearance. And that could possibly be because Jura is the Ten-Tails. Kind of like how you never see Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the same room. On top of this, Jura's chakra signature came up as negative when he came into contact with Konoha's sensory bubble, which, albeit doesn't mean all that much, since Jigen's chakra signature wouldn't be registered in the Konoha sensory bubble database on account of the fact that Jigen teleported in and out of Konoha the one time he was there. But it also came to light, my attention, that when the first ever time we see Jura, when he's descending down from the heavens to Boruto, we can see up his shirt thing. Cloak? Poncho? And as we see up Jura's, let's call it a shirt, we can see Magatama, or as they're conventionally called in the Naruto universe, Tomei. And when we're getting this upshirt shot of Jura, we can see that there's 3 Tomei. However, those 3 Tomei aren't laid out in the way that a 3 Tomei Sharingan would have them laid out. No, instead, those 3 Tomei are lined in a half circle of sorts, which is, rather conveniently, exactly how the 3 bottom Tomei on a Rinne Sharingan are laid out, as a Rinne Sharingan has 9 Tomei. 3 on the bottom in a half circle of sorts, 3 on the top in a triangle of sorts, and then 3 in the middle like a 3 Tomei Sharingan. And thus, even though we can't see the entirety of the Tomei on Jura's stomach, we can assume that Jura has the Tomei in the formation of a Rinne Sharingan on his stomach. And since there is only one Rinne Sharingan that we currently know of in the entirety of the Boruto universe, and that Rinne Sharingan belongs, or belonged, to the juvenile Ten-Tails, the fact that Jura has the Tomei formation of a Rinne Sharingan in his stomach pretty much all but confirms that Jura is the juvenile Ten-Tails. Tie this into the fact that on Jura's back there is the symbol of a Rinnegan, and yeah, the take-home message here of Jura's appearance is that he is the manifestation of the Rinne Sharingan's power. But in the face of all of that evidence, people still seem to believe that Jura is not in fact the Ten-Tails, but instead that Jura is actually the reincarnation of the Nine-Tails, Kurama. And genuinely, I wouldn't have made this video if I hadn't gotten 20 emails telling me all about how Jura is more likely Kurama than he is the juvenile Ten-Tails. And since we like to be logical and discerning on this page, I believe it's best to listen to prevailing theories when they're presented to me. And while I can't say that I necessarily agree with this theory, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. So I'd be remiss to not cover it. So with no further ado, let's get into Jura is Kurama. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like getting into all different kinds of anime topics, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime and manga. And if you just like the idea of chatting about anime and manga, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you just wanna look like somebody who keeps up with all things anime and manga, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. Get into all that. Today we're going to talk about a brand new sponsor to the page, Storiaverse. Storiaverse is a mobile entertainment platform that connects talented writers and animators from all across the world to create original animated stories in a new read-watch style. See, by blending captivating writing with immersive animation, Storiaverse offers you a brand new way to consume literature. And all the content on Storiaverse is original and exclusive to Storiaverse, as the stories are only available in the Storiaverse app, meaning the stories you engage with in the Storiaverse app will be nothing like you've ever read before. And Storiaverse accomplishes this by bringing in talented writers and animators from all across the globe. That way, every story not only has a distinct voice, but a distinct look, allowing you to engage with styles of writing and animation you may not have otherwise. See, for too long, read-watching stories have been focused towards children, but Storiaverse elevates the concept of visual reading to another level, offering a new experience for enthusiasts of mature, adult reading content. And if you're picky about the types of animation you like or the kind of stories you like to read, then trust me when I say Storiaverse has you covered, as animation styles can be found in anything from 2D to 3D to anime style. And the content spans every type of genre: science fiction, comedy, thrillers, whatever kind of stories you like to read, Storiaverse has them, especially if you're into more adult-centric stories. If you enjoy stories like Love, Death, and Robots or Has Been Hotel, stories with complex themes and deep character development, then those are the kinds of stories you'll stumble upon in this app. See, the only reading that I did for a long time is manga, because that's really all I have time for. However, after hearing about Storiaverse, I decided to give it a go, and I stumbled upon a story called Lucky Find, a story about a cybernetic woman dealing with a haunting, and the mix of a ghost thriller combined with cyberpunk themes, all being combined with an incredibly descriptive story and beautiful animation style, made me absolutely fall in love with not only that story, but also this app. So what are you guys waiting for? Download the free Storiaverse app today. It's available for both Android and iPhone users. And follow Storiaverse on either their Instagram or their TikTok, or both, for announcements about animation drops, teasers, and everything else. We've been reading for thousands of years. Isn't it time we revolutionized it? You see, we on this page have many times, probably too many times, speculated about how Kurama could return to the fold of Boruto. Because one, I'm in denial, and two, there seems to be so many good possible explanations for how Kurama could return to Boruto, in both ways that make narrative sense and ways that make logical sense. And so long as the door isn't completely closed and there still appears to be avenues with which Kurama could be resuscitated through, then yeah, I'm gonna hold out hope. However, I will say, I've never hypothesized that Kurama's return would come through the medium of a key antagonist of an arc. And today, that key antagonist we're talking about is Jura. And this is why I find this theory so interesting. Because let's say, hypothetically, Jura is Kurama's reincarnation. What does that mean for the story of Boruto as a whole? Does it mean that Kurama now has to die again? Does it mean if Jura is successful in consuming Naruto, that now Naruto will understand what Kurama went through for almost 3 decades? Pulling the absolute greatest Uno reverse role reversal card of all time in making Naruto the tailed beast? Because if you think about it, essentially what Jura wants to do is to consume Naruto for his power, using Naruto as a medium to get a giant boost in power, and possibly to use Naruto as a chakra battery, which is exactly what Naruto did to Kurama for his entire life. Or will Jura's soul be purified and Kurama's chakra extracted once again to return to the earth and possibly Naruto? Or is all this a relatively half-baked theory built on one line of dialogue from Chapter 8? Well, to answer the hard questions, we're gonna have to answer the easy questions first. So let's establish what the internet's argument is for Jura possibly being the reincarnation of Kurama. I want to start with the points that I find the most ridiculous and slowly work our way towards points that I believe truly could prove this theory to be correct. Which leads us to our first point. People say that Jura is Kurama because Jura descended from the sky the first time we saw him. Nick, how does that prove that Jura is Kurama? Great question. Basically, the line of logic here is that Jura descending down from the sky towards Boruto when he was all confined by Moegi and Bug was in essence in order to show us Kurama's soul descending down from the Pure Lands. And like, if you don't think about it at all, this kind of makes sense, because every single time we've ever seen somebody ascend to the Pure Lands, their soul has gone up. And that's in line with pretty much any perception of heaven. Heaven is up, hell is down. Nirvana lies on top of all of the different world circles, and so on and so forth. If you want the good place, go up. And thus, because the first time that we ever saw Jura, he was descending from the sky where presumably the Pure Lands are, this could possibly point to the fact that he is Kurama, as Kurama's soul would need to be pulled from the Pure Lands. Riveting stuff. Let's move on. The second point is that Jura knows Kawaki, and as we know, Kurama had numerous discussions with Kawaki, some of which even Naruto wasn't privy to. In fact, Kurama played a pretty big role in Kawaki's growth as a character and the love he had for Naruto, as Kurama told Kawaki about what Naruto had been through in his lifetime and made Kawaki realize that Naruto's childhood was eerily similar to his own. So yes, the fact that Jura in Chapter 8 knew Kawaki's name could prove that he is Kurama. The third point is that Kurama made up more than 50% of the chakra of the original Ten Tails, which was not only fully grown, but also substantially larger than the juvenile Ten Tails that's being kept at the Kara hideout. And therefore, if, hypothetically, Jura is the reincarnation of Kurama, as opposed to being the reincarnation of the juvenile Ten Tails, this could actually lead to Jura being stronger, as the line of logic here is that Kurama is stronger than the juvenile Ten Tails, which isn't an insane line of logic, because yes, the juvenile Ten Tails is not fully formed, and yes, Ten Tails are just amalgamations of nature chakra, and therefore, the larger they are in size, the more nature chakra they can withhold. So to assume that the Ten Tails that was split into the Nine-Tailed Beast is stronger than the juvenile Ten Tails that was at the Kara hideout, as a baseline, is not a crazy thing to assume. And that goes double when you consider the fact that Code has been experimenting on this Ten Tails for 3 whole years, maybe more. And not only has Code been experimenting on this Ten Tails, but also Code has been slicing pieces off of this Ten Tails, to the point where the juvenile Ten Tails that we see in Two Blue Vortex is emaciated, skinny, nailed to the floor. It looks weak. And since Gyuki and Kurama working together were able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Ten Tails that was formed in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, going so far as being able to match the attack potency output of the Ten Tails Tailed Beast bombs with their own, then yeah, the idea that Kurama is stronger than this emaciated version of a juvenile Ten Tails isn't crazy. And therefore, if we want to make a world-ending, strongest enemy we've ever seen, then using Kurama as the components to make that enemy would technically be a better idea than the emaciated juvenile Ten Tails. Better ingredients, better antagonist. Kishimoto. The fourth point is that Jura, when he came to Konoha, sensed Bijou Chakra in Himawari. However, he didn't sense Bijou Chakra coming from the Uzumaki household, which is weird because Shukaku is sealed inside the Uzumaki household. And thus, if Jura was simply just sensing Bijou Chakra inside Konoha, why wouldn't he also pick up Shukaku's chakra signature? Well, this could point to the fact that he himself is a reincarnation of Kurama and is picking up traces of his own chakra inside of Himawari, as the true #1 thing that everyone's talking about after the conclusion of Chapter 8 is why Himawari has Bijou Chakra and what that Bijou Chakra could possibly be. Is it Ten Tails Chakra? Is it Kurama's Chakra? And therefore this point is stipulating that Himawari specifically has Kurama's Chakra, which isn't an insane conclusion to come to on account of the fact that she has 2 whiskers. And thus Jura's inability to sense Shukaku's Chakra and ability to sense Kurama's Chakra might prove a connection between the two. That could prove that Jura is in fact Kawaki. And the most compelling point to possibly prove that Jura is in fact Kurama is probably the simplest. Jura wants to consume Naruto. And as we know, the Shinju want to consume the person that was most important to the person that they were founded from. And you would be insane to say that there was anybody more important to Kurama currently alive on Earth than Naruto. So Jura wanting to consume Naruto because he's Kurama actually makes perfect sense. But if you're going along with all of these points in the argument, you have to ask the question, okay, but how? All of the other Shinju were created by a claw grime biting somebody and manifesting a Shinju of that person. But Kurama is dead, all of his energy is depleted, and even when he was alive, he was trapped inside of Naruto. So how, on Kishimoto's Green Earth, could a claw grime have gotten their hands on Kurama? And fortunately for this theory, they do have an answer to this how. And the answer to that how lies in the mechanics of Baryon mode. See, Baryon mode works by colliding the chakras of Naruto and Kurama. And essentially through the same principles as nuclear fission, the energy resource we use to power nuclear plants, by colliding these two substances together, we create a new, incredibly powerful form of energy. But what's interesting about Baryon mode is that technically the two things being collided into each other to make this new form of energy are energy in itself, as chakra is essentially aura, lifeblood, mana, whatever you want to call it. Chakra is energy, and therefore that is to say that this new form of energy that's created by the colliding of two different sources of chakra could actually be more akin to chakra than we even realize. In fact, it's a possibility that by colliding these two different sources of energy, we're also creating a type of energy that can be lived off, as matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can simply be altered. If I take this book, which at one point was a tree, and before that was a seed, and before that was dirt and nitrogen and oxygen, and light it on fire, I'm not necessarily destroying this book. I am converting the energy that this book holds into heat and a couple of byproducts. And the conversion of mass into energy is not destruction, it's transference. So all this is to say that the energy that Kurama expended in his collision course with Naruto isn't necessarily gone. It just turned into energy, which, albeit Naruto used in his Baryon mode form, but that energy, when expended, would simply just go to a lower state of being. The clearest cut example of this in the human world would be ATP, the thing that keeps you and I running. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. It is the energy source of your body, and anything you consume is broken down into things like glucose and sucrose that eventually is used to create ATP. And that ATP is used to self-regulate your body temperature, to get you up staircases, to do anything you want to do. And when that ATP is used, one of the phosphates that's attached to it is detached, and it becomes ADP, or adenosine diphosphate. And then another one of those phosphates can be used, and that ADP becomes AMP, adenosine monophosphate. Now, if you eat more, you'll be able to break down more glucose and sucrose and all these kinds of things, and add more phosphates onto adenosines to have more energy, and your body will make some byproducts of the food that you ate. All this is to say, you're not destroying the peanut butter and jelly that you're eating. You're simply converting it into energy and byproducts. So the energy that Kurama expended in his clash with Naruto isn't necessarily gone. It was converted into a new form of energy and possible byproduct. However, what's cool about the Naruto universe is that while Naruto and Kurama were colliding their chakras and making that new form of energy, because they were destroying chakra and because all chakra is connected, every time that Naruto in his Baryon mode came into contact with Ishiki, because all chakra is connected, Naruto was destroying Ishiki's chakra, which is why he was able to shave off how much time Ishiki had left on this mortal plane every single time he came into contact with him. But this does technically mean, in the grandest sense I assume, that while Naruto was activating Baryon mode, he was mixing his chakra with not only Kurama's, but also Ishiki's, as there's no reason to assume that since Naruto was destroying Ishiki's chakra every single time he came into contact with him, that Ishiki's chakra was also being fed into the Baryon mode equation, which means that Ishiki was also probably feeding the energy that Naruto was expending and paying into the byproduct. And thus this grand expenditure of energy that was Baryon mode still has to technically exist in some capacity, as energy expended can't be destroyed. It just goes to a lower state of being, which is the rule of entropy, the greatest rule in the entire universe, that all things are trying to constantly be in a lower state of energy. All this is to say that the battle between Naruto, Kurama, and Ishiki interlinked their energies forever, and somehow that energy became Jura. But unfortunately, that does still kind of leave us with another big old how did Jura come to be? Did a claw grime stumble upon a massive energy and sink its teeth into its ephemeral form? Was the energy created from this clash somehow converted to the juvenile Ten Tails the second it was released from its chakra rods? As technically Jigen/Ishiki was using the power of this Ten Tails to battle against the likes of Naruto and Sasuke, and therefore the juvenile Ten Tails chakra would be just as interlinked to this Baryon mode equation as Ishiki's. And therefore, in the moment that the Ten Tails is released from the chakra rods that were hampering its chakra flow, the energy that was stolen from that Ten Tails filtered back to the Ten Tails, because as we know, if the chakra of a tailed beast exists on Earth, it always remanifests. And since Kurama wasn't around to reconsume this energy after that battle, the energy was just floating in the ether for a couple of years. And when that energy reflew back into the juvenile Ten Tails, it reinvigorated it. The Ten Tails was no longer emaciated, and thus this energy flowing back into the juvenile Ten Tails catalyzed its conversion into Jura, an entity so powerful that it's able to rule over all the other Shinju. And I mean, this is a possibility. It's not a perfect one, but it's a possibility. See, because we have to look at this theory from both a logical and a narrative perspective. So let's tackle the narrative aspect of this first. And to do that, we have to ask the question, if Jura is Kurama, what does that achieve narratively? See, if Jura was in fact Kurama, it could build up a massive amount of importance for a down-the-line battle between Jura and Naruto. And that would be incredible, borderline perfect, if Naruto was still the main character. Jura being the manifestation of Kurama, tinted by the mind of the juvenile Ten Tails, hell-bent on consuming the most important person on Earth to him, Naruto, would be an incredible storyline. But one, that storyline is predicated on Naruto not being the Daikokuten, and two, it's predicated on Naruto being strong enough to battle against the likes of Jura, which he isn't. But if he was still the main character, he could go through some kind of training arc where he needs to get stronger in order to battle against his former buddy, Kurama. And that would probably come through the medium of Naruto tapping into his Sage Mode, which would be a fantastic callback to the moment when Naruto, using his Sage Mode, defeated Kurama in a battle in his own stomach. And if this was Naruto Shippuden squared, that would be perfect. But since this is Boruto, Naruto stealing the spotlight to go through a relatively massive character development arc would fly directly in the face of everything Kishimoto is currently trying to do by sealing him away in the Daikokuten, as Naruto is currently locked away in a separate dimension where he can't do anything so that the youngsters can shine.
But Nick, Naruto doesn't have to be the one to battle against Kurama.
And yeah, I guess he doesn't have to be, but would anybody else battling against the reincarnation of Kurama make any sense? Like, oh, hey, here's this massive payoff that Kurama's back through the medium of Jura. You go deal with it, Shikadai?
Or Nick would probably be somebody like Boruto or Kawaki.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be who would do it, but once again, that wouldn't mean nearly as much as if Naruto was the one to do it. That'd be like Goku being the person to defeat Perfect Cell. Like, yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense, but because of the future storylines where Gohan was the sole protector of this dystopian world and he was killed by the androids, it would make sense that Gohan would be the person to defeat the perfect android. Now, if somehow Naruto could find a way to seal Jura inside of him, like a tailed beast, and become an even stronger version of the Jinchuriki he was previously, because Jura was made through the Ten Tails using a mixture of the Baryon mode energy that was a collaboration of the Ten Tails, Ishiki, Naruto, and Kurama, then yeah, that'd be incredible to see. But I think that Jura, being Jigen, who then Kawaki absentmindedly seals inside of himself to acquire enough power to eventually defeat the likes of Boruto, is a much more likely possibility, on account of the fact that he's one of the main characters, and the fact that that happening pushes Kawaki and the story ever closer to something that we know is going to happen, the destruction of Konoha, which seems incredibly unlikely because in the scene where we see Konoha destroyed, Kawaki tells Boruto, "I'm going to send you where I sent Naruto," which seems to imply that Naruto is still there, and it's even more unlikely when you consider the fact within the confines of this scenario that Naruto is now even stronger than he was before when he fought Ishiki, and therefore the idea that Konoha gets destroyed at all seems kind of like a stretch. And now let's look at this theory logically, point by point. Yes, Jura descended from the sky. And yes, the Pure Lands appear to be up, but to imply this point assumes that one, we believe that Kurama went to the Pure Lands, which I mean he probably did, and at least I hope, and two, that somehow Clawgrime was able to grab a soul from a separate dimension. The real reason that Jura descended down from the sky when he was first shown was one, because it looked cool, two, so we could see the Tomei on his belly, and three, because it asserts dominance, not because he was coming back from the Pure Lands. The second point is that Kurama knows Kawaki. And yeah, he does. But so does Jigen, and the way that Jigen knows Kawaki is not only much more important to Jura's possible character growth, but also to Kawaki's possible character growth. And since Kawaki is the person controlling the Daikokuten and not the person in the Daikokuten, he's probably the person whose storyline we're gonna focus on a bit more. So let's get to the actually more logical kind of sound points that could possibly prove this theory to be correct. Yes, Kurama was more than 50% of the original Ten Tails power, and therefore if Jura was created from the entirety of Kurama's chakra and even possibly elevated energy form chakra, and yes, Jura could possibly be stronger than he would be if he was created using the emaciated juvenile Ten Tails. But if Jura is Kurama, why does he have a Rinne Sharingan on his tummy? Because nothing about Kurama ties into the Rinne Sharingan whatsoever. Yes, there's times when Kurama gets brainwashed with a regular Sharingan, and in those moments, he himself has Sharingan eyes, but none of that ever draws back to the Rinne Sharingan in any capacity whatsoever. Not to mention, even though the juvenile Ten Tails is small and was emaciated when it was kidnapped or saved, it still has a Rinne Sharingan, the most powerful dojutsu known to man outside of the Jogan. Its power would still be immense. On to the fourth point, yes, Jura did sense Bijou Chakra into Himawari, and no, Jura didn't sense Bijou Chakra from the Uzumaki household, but I stress the word Bijou here, because Jura says that he senses Bijou Bijou chakra in Himawari, not Kyubi, which is the Japanese word for nine tails. Now, while I don't think Kishimoto would have said I sense Kyubi chakra in Himawari because I myself am a reincarnation of the Kyubi, because that would have been kind of revealing a major spoiler for a down-the-line reveal, and revealing that Jura is the reincarnation of Kurama in this moment wouldn't have had as much punch as it would have down the line. I believe that the real reason that Jura says that he senses Bijou chakra in Himawari is because it's not just the chakra of Kurama. And I believe the reason that he says he is the reincarnation of the same Bijou is because it's probably that they both have 10 tails chakra, because Daemon was interested in Himawari while Naruto was A, still in the village, and B, still the Jinchuriki of Kurama. So why would Daemon be interested in Himawari and not Naruto if she only had 9 tails chakra? And less than Naruto, mind you. On top of this, let's not forget that Shukaku being brought to the Hidden Leaf happened in an anime canon arc, and therefore it's not manga canon. It's never been confirmed that Shukaku is in the Hidden Leaf in the manga. But if you do want to believe that Shukaku is kicking it in the Uzumaki household, let's not forget that Shukaku is sealed inside of a pot, specifically designed to mask his chakra signature. Because if you think about the Shukaku retrieval arc for even 1 second, you'll remember that Shinki and Boruto were trying to get Shukaku from the Hidden Sand to the Hidden Leaf, because Urashiki was trying to hunt down Shukaku. And since the Otsutsuki are the greatest censors possibly in the universe, masking Shukaku's chakra signature was a must. Otherwise, Urashiki would simply be able to fly to their location whenever he wanted to. So one would actually hope that Jura wouldn't be able to pick up a Bijou chakra signature from the Uzumaki household. And finally, yes, Jura does want to consume Naruto. And yes, that would make a ton of sense if Jura was Kurama. And this is the most compelling point for Jura possibly being Kurama. In fact, it's so compelling I can't necessarily refute it, because Jigen choosing Naruto as the most important person in his life never necessarily sat right with me, as Jigen was way closer to the likes of Kawaki. And while one could say that Jigen despised Kawaki but at least respected Naruto, it still feels like a weird stretch to me. And now I know a lot of people will also say, but what about Kashin Koji? He was able to defeat Jigen, but I don't think that Jigen/Shiki ever had any respect for Kashin Koji. He knew he was a spy within Kara, and he knew that his plan was to kill him when he was at his weakest. And I'm not the only person who's slightly confused by the fact that Jura chose Naruto, as people have theorized about why it could have happened, with some people going so far as to say that Jigen subconsciously loves Naruto because Jigen, the monk, was freed by Naruto. That is to say, when the corporeal form of Jigen was shed so that Ishiki could manifest in his true form, in that moment Jigen the monk was freed, and therefore Jigen holds Naruto in high regard. But Naruto was in the person who killed Jigen. That was Kashin Koji. So yes, I have to concede the point that Jura being Kurama would actually explain why he chose Naruto, much more than Jura being Jigen. But that's really the only point I can concede in this matter. So when it comes down to it, while this theory is kind of fun, it suffers from the fact that Naruto is no longer the main character. And while I know a lot of people in the Boruto fandom would prefer if Naruto was the main character, once again, he's not. And the sooner that we as a fan base are able to come to grips with that fact, the sooner we'll be able to look at the story more objectively and see what's actually coming down the pipe, because understanding the narrative vision of Kishimoto is 50% of formulating a theory. But what do you guys think? Do you believe, after hearing all the points laid out in this video, that Jura could in fact be the reincarnation of Kurama? Tell me in the comments down below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. What do I know? I'm just a man whose dog ate his donut off the dining table today.